Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor, for 5 minutes for her questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that there is room for bipartisan cooperation and progress here. Over the past term in Congress, Congressman Rob Whitman and I led a critical minerals working group out of the Select Committee on countering the Chinese Communist Party. Some of you were instrumental in helping us develop recommendations, so I highlight those to Energy and Commerce Committee. We actually hammered out a few pieces of legislation as well, but I have to admit, I'm very frustrated by this. This hearing comes, it's so inconsistent because so much of the progress that we've made over the past 2 administrations is being sabotaged right now. A lot of it's coming in the Billionaire Boondoggle bill that will take away a lot of the investments that we've made in shoring up our domestic critical mineral supply chains and strategies. Remember, we invested also through the bipartisan infrastructure law at DOE for battery materials processing to help U.S. manufacturers expand what they're doing on processing and domestic supply. The DOE Loan Program Office, you know, you're going after that in the Billionaire Boondoggle bill. That is the office, the Loan Program Office, that is helping the private sector make these important investments in domestic critical mineral supply chains, from mining to processing to reshoring. And then we know that you have the important pieces of the Inflation Reduction Act also in your sights. So you're kind of taking the best tools we've developed over the past few years away from being able to strengthen our supply chains. And then you bring in this arbitrary tariff policy too, where you're poking our partners and allies like Canada and Australia, imposing tariffs on them. So how, you know, I think my Republican colleagues in this administration have lost a strategic focus when it comes to how we build our own domestic supply chains here and incentivize the private sector to get involved. One example, Ms. Hunter, you testified in front of our Critical Minerals Work Group, thank you very much, is the 30D Clean Vehicle Tax Credit that now is in the Billionaire tax giveaway. They want to take that away. How will that impact our ability here in the U.S. to bolster our domestic critical mineral supply chains, and how will that impact our national security?
So I haven't seen any of the final versions of the reconciliation text, so please take this with my need to get back and review for further comments. But a successful critical minerals policy does leverage the U.S. demand sectors that we've talked about with policy handcuffs that encourage them to source domestically as much as possible, and then also avoid sourcing from adversaries. That's extremely critical, and it must be well sequenced with the market. Similarly, we have to counteract cost disadvantages at home. The 45X tax credit does help attract investment here consistently over a long period of time. And without that, we risk the continued disinterest of investors and producers looking at the United States as an opportunity to process. So I do think that we risk undermining the president's very clear agenda for unleashing American minerals and making sure we leverage domestic processing, if unintentionally, by foregoing some of these important considerations in policy today.
Thank you. Mr. Howell, you did very important work at the Department of Energy's Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains Office. Reporting at the end of 2024 suggested that DOE was considering as well how to do more to support U.S. critical minerals projects, working with all sorts of grant recipients that were struggling due to Chinese dumping and price manipulation. Where should we go from here? I mean, that's the jurisdiction of this committee, oversight of that office. What can we do to support those efforts? And I know the demand signal is important, but what do you recommend to the committee?
So thank you, Congresswoman. Very important, you know, the IIJA battery manufacturing grant program, very important to the battery industry. It provides that high risk, high reward leveraging of private sector funding to install first of a kind, in many cases, first of a kind production capacity in the United States. And, and it takes time. to actually launch those programs and then see production materials coming from them. So a consistent support for that, a continuation of the execution of that program is going to be so important. And for those companies that may be struggling in the near term, the 30D tax credits basically do provide that market pull for those materials that are going to be coming out of those facilities once they are actually in production.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. The chair now recognizes the vice chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Dr.